and drought resilience. So all these three are highly interdigitated kind of topics. Land restoration itself suggests that there is some kind of deterioration of the land, and that's why we need to restore the land. Desertification, because world across the issue has been haunting the mankind, and drought resilience because the world entirely is facing the issue of the drought today. You might have seen that the surroundings of the Amazon River, they are considered to be the highly water stressed parts of the world today. That is something, a very strange kind of a scenario, that Amazon River is also not supplying the water to the extent it used to be once upon a time. So when we are talking about the drought resilience, that is the objective. Whether you treat the deteriorated land or you stop the desertification, but your final objective is to obtain the drought resilience. So drought resilience, actually speaking, is a product of soil quality management and the water resource management. Only when you can combine these together, you can obtain the drought resilience. Now the fundamental question comes to, from where this Environment Day and all other celebrations have started coming into vogue. So way back in 1994, the United Nations established one institution called United Nations Conventions to Combat Desertification, UNCCD, as the sole legally binding international agreement linking environment and development to sustainable land management. So the issue was formalized in 1994, but it has been a legacy issue, truly speaking, to the present world. If you go back to the history, right from the day the Industrial Revolution was launched in the world, the land degradation came into being, because industrialization and land degradation both go always hand in hand. Now the world across, the issue of desertification is because of different reasons. If you see the country like Uzbekistan, the main issue they are facing is the climate change, the temperature variations. If you see the African countries, the main issue is the over mining, because all the countries of the world which are considered to be the developed countries, they have, truly speaking, taken the position of the African countries only for the mining purpose. You name China, you name America, you name Australia, but they have taken the position of the large land parcels in Africa simply for the purpose of mining. And that's why today Africa is facing a lot of problem from land quality point of view. If you talk about India, the main reason for land degradation is over-industrialization and over-usage of chemical fertilizers and pesticides in the agriculture. And that was, derived pride out of as a scientific agriculture. So that is something very strange, very shocking to all of us, that what is called scientific agriculture is the most unscientific version of the agriculture. If you just take the stock of the situation as to how just 5 years back, the proportion of degraded land used to be there in the Asian countries. Because Asia is used as a dumping ground of the waste that is produced by the West, we are losing the quality of the land year by year. And this is the status of 2019. What happened to Central Asia, what happened to the Eastern Asia, what happened to the Sub-Saharan Africa and all. And you can see that more than 20% land in general has been completely destroyed from quality point of view. It has been converted into the barren land parcels. And if the same pace, the same momentum is continued to be allowed to be prevailed, I'm sure that by 2050, there will be more than 50% of the land degraded into Asia and Africa, these two continents of the world. If you take the situation into consideration from Indian context, Districts which have more than 50% land converted into desert are like this: Jaisalmer, Lahore and Spiti, Kargil, and Gujarat point of view, Panchmahal and Surennagar. These are the two districts in which more than 50% of the land has been desertified. So this is a matter of concern to everybody. This is a map of India in which the desertified land has been spotted. You can see here at a glance that India is having as good as 20% land completely desertified, and that's a matter of serious concern to our country. 124 million hectares of India's geographical area is degraded today. That is something really a very big challenge for India. 104.2 out of which is arable, means agriculture can be made on it. You can say that whatever has been degraded, more than 80% is usable land, and that is a matter of concern to all of us. In 4 years, India lost over 30 million hectares of healthy land to degradation, and this is the United Nations data. This is very alarming. When we are boasting of industrializing this country, we must have a proper concentration as to how we are losing fast our land quality. On the one hand, we are earning dollars and pounds. Our treaty of the foreign currency is getting fatter and fatter day by day. But at what cost? At the cost of the quality of the land, means at the cost of the future of our future generations, that we are earning the dollars and pounds today. So how long can we do it? We are eating our own fat. That is a fact. I am just showing you the shocking figures of the sewage treatment plants, their capacity and utilizable potential. Basin wise I am going. Ganga Basin is the largest basin of this country. Design capacity of the STPs located therein is 587, but utilized capacity is 322 million liters a day only. Means only 55% of the installed capacity is used. What does it indicate? Our Ganga is polluted because we are not utilizing our STPs that are already established. And then we are spending crores and crores of rupees on Ganga rejuvenation and Ganga cleaning. What's the use of this? All this public money is simply wasted. This is the real fact. The same way Godavari Basin. We are not using the full capacity. Hindon, Satluj, again this is underutilized. But in all, our sewage treatment plants are not properly functional, and that's why our rivers are polluted. On the other hand, we have the misplaced priorities in the policies. Just consider the cost of effluent treatment per MLD, that is coming out to about rupees 50,000. Whereas the cost of urban roads, that is coming to 8 crore per kilometer in the length. And still we have all the money to build the urban roads, and we don't have money to treat our effluent. Because the roads are visible, the roads catch your votes, you go for the roads. And this aspect, treatment of the effluent and cleaning of the rivers, that is not visible to the people, and they don't take you to the votes, you don't do it. So it is all the politics of the votes. We don't have any concern for the health of the people. So I have used the terminology misplaced priorities of our policymakers and the politicians. Now, what are the real challenges of this country? You see here, why our water bodies are so polluted, why our water streams are so polluted. You might have gone through the fact that Sabarmati is the 5th most polluted river of this country. Why it is so? In this country, untreated discharge is to the tune of 26.5 billion liters of polluted water. And these are the figures of the Central Pollution Control Board. These are the figures that I have taken from the Central Pollution Control Board. Just imagine 26.5 billion liters that is flowing into the streams, the fresh water. Today, you might have heard that most of the cancer patients in India, they are not consuming tobacco at all. And still they are cancerous. Why? Because we are consuming this polluted water. And because we are consuming the fruits and vegetables grown out of this polluted water. That's why we are all suffering from the cancer, though we are not tobacco consumers. There is a large gap between the sewage generated and the treatment capacity. Only 30% of the total sewage generated by urban India is treated, and 70% is let into the rivers and water bodies. There has been tremendously poor maintenance of the STPs. The discharges from STPs to the tune of 39% do not conform to the environment protection standards. Though we treat them, they don't meet the environment standards. Industrial and domestic effluent is not separated. This again a policy issue with India. We mix them together and then we try to treat them. That's why it is very costly. If you try to separate them, the domestic waste will be converted into fertilizer, natural manure, and that will be an asset to this country. Instead of utilizing the asset, we are converting the asset into a wastage. That is the foolery of the highest order that has been executed by our own policy makers, our own executive machinery. I am also part of this executive machinery. I don't disown the responsibility. Now, why this desertification happens, why the soil becomes degraded, I am coming to the point what do we mean by the desertification and what is the land quality degradation. Human activities including deforestation and overexploitation of aquifers accelerate the desertification process and climate change as well. According to the United Nations, more than 24 billion tons of fertile soil disappear every year. Today, 2/3 of the earth is undergoing a process of desertification, and if no action is taken, 1.5 million kilometers square of agricultural land will be converted into desert. What's desertification and what's the desertization? There is a very thin line of demarcation between these two terminologies. Because we are technocrats, we will be able to appreciate what is what. Desertification is actually speaking a final result of human influence. When human influence directly is attributed to some kind of process of converting a fertile land into a desert, it is called desertification. When natural factors and human activities, they all together contribute to process of converting the land into a desert, it is called desertization. So nature does only a limited damage to us, and whatever the nature does is recouped in course of time. It is a recoverable process, whereas whatever is done by the human being is as good as unrecoverable process. And that's why desertification is more dangerous than desertization. Now let's understand what are the causes of desertification. Polluting surface and groundwater, they are a serious threat to us in the Indian context for the soil degradation. You are here sitting in a city where one of the largest industrial estate is there, and that industrial estate is not respectably known in the world. It is known for burying their effluent into the ground, and they pollute the groundwater directly. And that's why surrounding Vadodara, if you dig the groundwater, the pH value is to the tune of 6.2. This is a fact. It's a red water. If you go to the southern part, Navsari, Valsad, etc., the situation is worse even. So, let's understand deforestation, number one. If you go to Himalayas, every day no less than 10,000 trees are cut down. Every day India is losing 10,000 trees per day. 10,000 trees. Every day. This is the number of trees that we are losing in Himalayas. Just imagine. Poor agricultural practices. What I told you, scientific agriculture. This is a misnomer. That's the most unscientific way of making agriculture. It's not sustainable. Just giving you a small example over here. You farmers, because I have served here in Vadodara and Bharuch, I know. Earlier they used to grow the country cotton. And today they are growing the BT cotton. Because they feel that it's the scientific way of doing agriculture. When they started in 2005, the BT cotton yielded them wonderful. But today the same BT cotton is giving them counterproductive results. What's the reason? These hybrid varieties, which are called genetically modified varieties, they are not sustainable. Over a period of time, they lose that yield. They are also prone to the ailments, and they also deteriorate the quality of the soil because they demand tremendous chemical fertilizers and extremely toxic pesticides. And finally, when you use the cotton and the cotton seeds in the form of cottonseed oil, that is highly carcinogenic. And today cotton seed oil is as good as poison for human beings. Earlier the cotton seed oil used to be a source of nutrition for the human body, and today it has become extremely carcinogenic. The BT cotton seeds, they are the main cause of our ailment. And that's why no one should eat or consume the cotton seed oil in the today's situation, because our farmers grow only BT cotton. So poor agricultural practice, they harden the soil, they really speaking, they exploit the nutrients within the soil, and finally over a period of time, the soil is required to be left barren. And because of the same practices that America has lost over 20% of their land, and that's why they are now coming back to the organic farming. Now they have started appreciating the organic farming. Overexploitation of natural resources that this today's generation is known for. We are unnecessarily consuming the natural resources though we don't need. This is called extravaganza, or you can say it is consumerist approach, whatever you name it, but this is again one reason of the soil degradation. Bad livestock practices. Earlier there used to be so many cattle. Today, per 14 person there is one milching animal with us. Earlier there used to be per 6 person one milching animal, and in the olden days there used to be 3 milching animals per person. If you read Srimad Bhagavat, Nanda Baba, father of Lord Krishna, he had 9 lakh cows. He had 9 lakh cows. In Srimad Bhagavat it is. Today you can't imagine anywhere 9 lakh cows. But they used to maintain those cows in a very scientific manner. Whereas today our livestock is handled in so bad a manner, and that's one more reason why our soil is getting degraded. What are the consequences? World's poorest countries face the worst consequences of desertification. Loss of biodiversity, your Vishwamitri, that is known for biodiversity. It is next to Ganges. Vishwamitri is next to Ganges in the biodiversity. Over 23 species of Vishwamitri are extinct species. and they are exotic species, and nobody knows the value of Vishwamitri. And we are fond of, placing the town planning schemes in the flood zones of Vishwamitri. And we say that we are making progress of this Vadodara city. I don't know what kind of definition of development that we are subscribing to. The same way, food insecurity because of the crop failure. Now that is haunting India. Loss of vegetation cover, increased risk to zoonotic diseases, means the artificial diseases that are spread by the man, then loss of forest cover, the decrease in drinking water reserves due to loss of aquifers. This is not appreciated by us because it's a long-term effect. But in all, the lives of 250 million people are already affected because of this desertification in the world. And up to 135 million could be displaced because of the climate migration by 2045. Now let us reboot our thought process. Let us reboot. Why I am using this word? Because we are subscribing to extremely objectionable, unscientific kind of nuances, and we don't know what's the connotation of a particular nuance, and still we subscribe to. And I always use the phraseology scientificism. It is not scientific attitude, it is scientificism that we have fallen prey to. How could India sail through pandemic and provided free food grain to 80 crore people for over 5 years? This is a fact. We know 80 crore people are fed free food grains in this country for last 5 years. Right from 2020, the pandemic time. How it could happen? Let's peep into. It is thanks to our early efforts of the then policymakers. This is something shocking to be learned. I'm wading you through all the facts and figures. Our today's real crisis is characterized by inability of reaching the root cause of the problem. Where to begin and how to begin is not clear to us. And that's why ours is considered as a lost generation, directionless generation. This is the blog that I put on my personal website. Economics of the world are not doing well since long back. This is a part of rebooting our thought process. The foremost reason, in my view, is that economics as a subject per se has been delinked from the resource management. Economics has been delinked from the resource management and has rather been reduced to be merely a currency management. 5 trillion economy, 7 trillion economy. But what's the use of this money if I can't buy the quality of life out of this money? Even Mukesh Ambani is unable to get the quality of life. Then what's the use of his money? So we are simply counting the money. We don't know what are the resources to be got out of this money. And when resource management is dealing from the economics, it is called currency management and not the economics at all. As natural reasons are being grossly ignored by the modern conceptualizers of development, sustainability has become a mirage. We are all talking about this sustainability, but that has become a mirage because we don't subscribe to the right nuances. The thought process in general has been vitiated so much so that the mankind has fallen divided between the developmentalist and naturalist. If I will talk on quality of water of Vishwamitri to sustain the biodiversity of the river, I will be considered a naturalist. But at the same point of time, people will dub me as anti-development kind of a personality. This is a fact. If I talk about the Vishwamitri, I will be dubbed as an anti-developmentalist. This is a fact. Is there any feasible kind of a way to revivify the wisdom? Yes, it is. There are certain ways to resuscitate the wisdom into ourselves. Water used to be known as fuel of growth engine by the economists of this country. A time has come, people including economists, they would have to appreciate its existential value. This is very loaded terminology. I am not saying water is a commodity. It has a price. It has existential value. Means if you have the water, your existence will be there. And that's how the water has to be valued. It's not that 20 rupee per liter bottle of water. I don't mind 20 rupee or 50 rupee or 200 rupees. It's not a matter of concern at all. 1 liter bottle of water is not important. The 1 liter water is important. That is what I'm going to drive for. 1 liter water is important to save the life. So that kind of existential value of water is never understood to the people. I'm just taking you to the economic side of this pandemic. You know, in the olden days, means during the first 3-5 year plan, 1950 to 1965, there used to be, 45% of plan allocation to water and agriculture. Industry and power, they all used to be given some kind of weightage, to the tune of 17 to 18%. That was the time. If you see today in the normal situation, we are giving only 14% to water and agriculture. Earlier there used to be 40% plus. Today we are giving plan allocation to the tune of 14% to water and agriculture. This is something, a very dichotomous, very shocking kind of a proposition, but this is a fact. These are the data that I borrowed from the Planning Commission, the Niti Aayog today. And what we are getting in return from the water and agriculture, 16 to 17% into GDP. 14% we are spending, 17% we are getting out of, so 3% is the net profit from water and agriculture. And we consider it as a charity. Water is given free to everybody, whatever it is. We say that, farmers are peasant, they wear the turban, they wear the BD, they consume the BD, they consume tobacco, they are the most backward communities of the country. But the same farmers give us the profit. They take 14% from our plan allocation and they give us 17%. So they are giving us the profit of 3%. On the other hand, if you see the industries, energy, which are taking today 35 to 38% of the plan allocation, they give you hardly 24% into GDP. They take 37% and they give you hardly 24% in the GDP. So they are making 13% loss. So what's the use of this industry and energy then? It's a loss-making business for this country. Now taking you to this, what happened into pandemic? In the pandemic situation, there was everything locked down. And your first quarter of 2021 reported minus 23.9% of the GDP. You might be recollecting. It was nosedive in the GDP, minus 23.9%. Even in those days, agriculture and water, they contributed 3 to 4% positive in the GDP. When industry, power, energy altogether contributed minus 23.9, agriculture and water contributed plus 4%. So this is called a friend in need. Water and agriculture are friend in need. And this is the existential value of water that we need to understand. How did we begin then? Why we could supply 5 kg per month food grains to 80 crore people? How could we make it? The history go back to 1950. How did we begin in 1950 when we were just independent and we were just into policy making? We hardly had our army. We didn't have the schools. We didn't have the water bodies. And population at that time was 300 million. Providing food grain to even 300 million was not possible to us, and we used to import PL-47. Many of you who are today senior must be remembering PL-47 kind of wheat, the smelly wheat that were required to be imported by this country from USA. And limitation of land and water resources, that was the biggest constraint, because you cannot expand the land. Whatever is the cyclable water resource you have to make it with. You can't expand your water resources. Whatever is cyclable, given by the nature, you have to limit your demands within. Into this, the 5-year plans, they were devised with food security as the topmost priority, in spite of serious flaws in the implementation of the 5-year plans. Academically, I am saying, there were not many shortcomings in the implementation of the 5-year plan. But on the other side, what was the achievement? We attained self-sufficiency in the food production by 1975. That was the net achievement. If you consider the water storage potential, when we got the independence, it was just 15 billion cubic meter. And by 1975, because of this 3-5-year plan and our topmost priority to water and agriculture, 35% plus allocation from the plan budget to the water and agriculture, we had more than 4,500 dams and 200 billion cubic meter of water storage potential. From 15 billion cubic meter to 200. Just imagine, it's 20 times. And this we could attain in just 25 years. And that's why we became food secure, and that's why we could supply 80 crore people the food grains for 5 years. So the success is attributable to our past water planning and the financial planning as well. This we need to understand. When we started our journey as an independent country, our food production in the million ton was hardly 134, and today we have something to the tune of 279. This is the journey that we have made. These are all the yields of different food grains. Everywhere we have increased. This is the chart. Today we are producing 278 million tons of food grain. And that is because of this water resource management that we did in the initial 25 years of time. And today we are not paying any attention at the water resource management. Today our entire target is on the surface transport. We are spending 1 lakh crore for the bullet train. But we don't have even 10,000 crores to repair our existing dams. Today we have more than 5,400 dams. But we don't have 10,000 crore rupees to repair these dams. And we have 1 lakh crore rupee to build a bullet train from Ahmedabad to Bombay. Yeah. That is something very strange. You see here in the India's position in the world today, in the food grain production, in the million hectares, we are ranking 7th, though we have hardly 329 million hectares of land. America, you can see so much of land. As compared to that, we have a very limited land area, and still everywhere we are first, second and third in the food grain production. You can see here, and these are the figures by IARI, Indian Agricultural Research Institute. So our peasants, our farmers, we neglect them, we curse them because they wear the turban, their clothes are dirty, they are smelly, they smoke even BDs, but still they are doing much better than what our industrialists are doing. That is, we need to appreciate. The low weightage and high return sectors are like this. The expenditure for the irrigation and agriculture that we are doing is the green line, and for the industries and power, that is like this, the blue line. You can see here, agriculture and water is given only half the priority or importance as compared to the energy and power sector or the industry sector. This is the vital role of water in the agriculture. If you compare the unirrigated product and the irrigated product, you can see here, jowar, it is hardly 1.08 tons per hectare, whereas if you irrigate the same, it will be 1.32. But if you see the wheat, it is 1.83, and in the irrigated it is 3.18, as good as double. So this is the contribution of irrigation into agricultural production rise. These are the high weighted sectors. I have drawn a chart of this. Continuously importance is given to the industry, power and transport for last so many 5-year plans, and still they are not coming into any kind of profit mode. They are consuming more and more, and they are not contributing to the GDP to the tune they should. We need to understand this. How our coffer is deflated, and this deflation is thanks to the greedy attitude of our industrialists. They earn personally, they don't give it back to the society. It is a book adjustment, and that's why here it is reflected in the chart. They are carving out so much from the public kitty, and they are not contributing back in the form of GDP. What's the way forward? In the given situation, for the purpose of addressal of the droughts, water resource management, soil quality management is the most critical things to be done. Among several players in the game, the most important would be the role of the water professionals. They will have to come to the forefront. The disruptions are multidimensional, many. There are certain subtle, serious threats. If they are not addressed timely by this country, the disruptions will lead to a complete devastation of this country. No need to define it or delineate it any further. Structural, non-structural, institutional measures are required to be introduced in this country at a very high speed, perhaps faster than the bullet train. These reforms are needed. If I take you just to a glimpse of this state, Gujarat, our water sources, they are highly lopsided. In the southern portion, 70% of the water sources are there, whereas in the northern side, it is hardly 10 to 15%. In Saurashtra, it is hardly 18%. In North Gujarat, it is hardly 14%. In Kutch, there are hardly 3% of the water sources. This is how the lopsided distribution within the state is. So what do we need to do? We need to go for distributed water resource management so as to attain the benefits of the redundancy. We need to go for water use efficiency. We need to go for enhanced and efficient conveyance system that is called responding to the crisis. The same way we need to have some large storage potential that is called the buffering. Rise in the share of domestic water supply is also a matter of concern to us. Earlier, when we used to be the rustic people, we consumed only 45 liters per capita per day. Today we are the urbanites. We are consuming 450 liters per capita per day. This is the fact. And that's why the water stress. So the water accounting, pricing, everything has to be taken care of properly in this country. Upgradation of the water supply system is also needed. Enhancement in the town planning philosophy is also needed. As I told you in your Vishwamitri flood zones, 4 town planning schemes have been approved in the last 6 years. Because when I was in the irrigation department, the clearance used to be coming to me. That's why I know that this is the way we are developing our cities. We are establishing our habitations in the flood zones, and then we are crying during the monsoon that so much of devastation is occurred by Vishwamitri. Vishwamitri has not done any damage to you. Actually, we people have gone to the way of Vishwamitri, and that's why we are devastated. We need to understand this. The hydrological concepts required to be remodeled. Just I am giving you a glimpse of that you have receptacles does not mean you have the water. Only if God will give you some water, your receptacles will be filled. So you are completely depending on the nature, you are completely dependent on the catchment area, and we don't care of the flood zone, we don't care of the catchment area. Sardar Sarovar's catchment area is also badly devastated, and that's why Sardar Sarovar receives sometimes floods and sometimes only scanty water flow into. And that is the situation of all the dams. We have changed our cropping patterns. We have started growing paddy near Khambat in the Mahi Basin, just adjoining basin is Mahi Basin. And they have started growing paddy. Just imagine, it's a crime. They can't grow paddy. Their land is not meant for paddy growing. Better they grow castor, better they grow tobacco, and they have become rich out of growing tobacco, and they have left aside the tobacco, and today they have switched to paddy growing, and they are guzzling water like anything. Tobacco used to take a delta of hardly 42 centimeter, whereas paddy requires 1.6 meter. Just imagine. Water demand is rescheduling. Canal capacity is required to be remodeled. That's why bringing all types of soils into the equations of productivity is a need of the hour. For example, your Baratek. You are on the one side of the Baratek. Padra onwards is the Baratek. Okay. Now in the Baratek, if you don't use this land, you won't be able to grow the best quality pulses. The best quality pulses has grown by your Baratek. But we are not using that Bara land for pulse growing. We are trying to grow, sugar cane and banana over there. I don't know what kind of, sense God has gifted to us. We are simply running after currency. We don't see what is the sustainability. We don't see what the soil is meant for. Water conservation and recharge measures are also required to be taken. Institutional, setups are also required to be introduced in the water sector. If you have proper data of the water, you will have a clear image like this, what you are seeing on the right hand. If you don't have the clear data, you will see the image on the left hand. So a lot of data acquisition is required to be introduced into water sector, so that your water becomes a parameter into your equations of counting, and you will be able to better use the available water. Entire water management is founded on 4 columns: supply management, planning and accounting, demand management, legal and institutional reforms. Out of which our entire focus is on the one column that is called the supply management. We always do the supply management, we never do the planning, we never do the accounting, we never do the demand management, we never go for legal and institutional reforms. And that's why our water is not performing. Only if it is standing on these 4 columns, it could perform. Because the actions are interconnected, one action would facilitate many others, and hence the chain reaction would be there. Whereas we don't do anything. What is needed is a huge battery of seasoned water professionals to perform on so many fronts, but unfortunately we don't have the water professionals to the required extent. Biodiversity rich soil is the only way to stop the desertification and droughts. Biodiversity rich soil, not the monocropping soil. That is needed. Coordinated land use planning is required. Today our land use planning is driven by the builders. Our builders decide how to use the land parcel. What should be the land use pattern? Where should go the TP scheme? They decide. And that is something very serious. Government machinery does not decide it. The same way preservation of vegetation cover is needed, whereas we are felling 10,000 trees a day. Then the climate change education, we don't impart at all. Even in our master's course, climate change related education is lacking. We don't have any master's course on the climate change. We take it as a part of hydrology. That is again a serious point with our syllabus. The same way our focus should be on the organic farming rather than the chemicalized farming, which we need to go back to our ancient practices, the traditional practices. The reforestation is needed by India. We need to seriously consider this. Otherwise, only the lack of green cover will kill us. When we are talking today 46-degree temperature in Gujarat, why it is? Because we have lost the green cover. So, in the conclusion, I would say that epitomical words of Vivekananda. Epitomical words of Vivekananda. He delivered his famous lecture, Work and Secret. Those who are scholars would read it. This is the famous most lecture of Vivekananda that he delivered in Los Angeles in 1900. He concluded with this statement: let us perfect the means, the end will take care of itself. Thank you so much.
Now we will have a question answer session. Anybody has any question, please raise your hand.